So I am here with the good news of the week. Unfortunately, Zachary is not going to be with us for this section, but he is going to be back next week. So let's start with some interesting statistics about England and Wales, where 70% of people think that crime has gone up in the last few years. But in a similar story to the US, where a lot of people think crime has gone up and actually crime has gone down, despite a little bit of a up and down situation during the pandemic. This article in the conversation, which is really interesting, says that violence, burglary, and car crime have been declining for the last 30 years, close to 90%. So it's virtually disappeared the rise that they had during the late 90s, like many other countries. This drop in violence also includes domestic violence, other violence against women. Antisocial behavior has also declined. And the article talks about how now most of the crime that's going on in England and Wales is actually fraud and computer misuse. Essentially, like better security measures in cars and malls, just kind of across society, has made people less interested in doing crimes, and they just kind of moved to cyber crimes. But still, crime overall is down. So good for England and Wales. Hopefully, public perception catches up with the stats there because that is a wild, wild decline. So let's move on to Japan. We had this story featured in the newsletter recently, kind of as entertainment value. A story in late April circulated around the internet about the Yakuza, which is Japan's kind of mafia. If you've seen Tokyo Vice or any of the classic Yakuza movies, you know these Japanese gangsters, they have suits, a chain, dark sunglasses, tattoos everywhere. Sometimes they cut off parts of their finger either as an initiation ritual or punishment. So those guys, if you have any conception in your head, they had a high-ranking member of one of the Yakuza gangs arrested for stealing something, but what he was stealing was Pokemon cards. So this article kind of, made the rounds around the internet that the Yakuza have been demoted. They have fallen to such an extent that they have now been reduced to stealing Pokemon cards. But behind the kind of funny entertainment value of, that one commenter posted, oh, and instead of catching them all, he got caught. Behind that is actually a very interesting story about how the Japanese government actually had this tough on crime approach that really worked for organized crime in Japan. Instead of making it illegal to be part of the Yakuza, they essentially made participating in modern life for Yakuza members so difficult that people just stopped wanting to join the Yakuza. Before, they were stealing Pokemon cards and doing things like illegal sea cucumber fishing, which they're doing nowadays. The Yakuza are highly involved in drug trafficking, sex trafficking, real estate scams, all kinds of illegitimate and legitimate seedy business. And the Japanese government had, really gotten tired of this. So in the 90s, they passed a series of laws that were like anti-gang laws. But the more interesting ones were a series of ordinances called the social exclusion ordinances, I believe. They couldn't buy a car, they couldn't rent a house or an apartment, they couldn't have a cell phone because they disallowed the cell phone companies from signing contracts with any Yakuza member. They couldn't apply for a credit card, they couldn't open a bank account. And they also instituted fines and other violations for interacting with a Yakuza member, either as a private citizen or as a company. So they essentially irritated the Yakuza out of existence because people didn't want to join up anymore. Back in the early millennium, the Yakuza numbered at 90,000. It's now under 25,000, and the average age of the Yakuza is a bit over 50, so they're essentially going to age and die out. Very interesting phenomenon. Haven't heard of that approach being used anywhere else in the world. Probably will come a day pretty soon that the Yakuza are not a thing anymore, so we'll only be seeing them in the movies and TV. So moving onward from crime, Hannah Ritchie from Our World in Data. And if you aren't familiar with the website Our World in Data, it's a really fantastic place to go check out stats from literally the entire world. She's a researcher there. She has a great new post about the world has probably passed peak pollution. So this is really a trend that's being carried by rich countries. Pollution in lower and middle income countries is still increasing. But the process by which countries industrialize, get richer, pollute everything, and then figure out how to drop their pollution is something that's already been figured out by richer countries. That means that lower and middle income countries are going to go through that process a lot faster. And so we think that we've reached our zenith and we're only going to come down from here. So this might, like I said before, it might be a different story regionally, but we're moving into a world where we've figured out how to deal with pollution. It means a lot of lives are going to be saved. A lot of people actually die every year because of pollution. So this is a good trend. So last but not least, we are going to move to Brazil, where deforestation in the Amazon has hit a 5-year low. Conservation efforts essentially began in the 80s and 90s when President Lula, who's the president now, he was also the president back around 2010. Deforestation was at an all-time low from when it began anyway. Obviously, before it began, it was lower then. But it was at an all-time low. But Lula was left office, and Jair Bolsonaro, the very same, came in. And around 2014, deforestation in the Amazon skyrocketed. So Lula came back into office in January 2023, and since then there's been a pretty precipitous decline. So we're at a point right now that the rise that occurred between 2014 and 2023, so during the tenure of Bolsonaro, he's reversed half of the deforestation increase that occurred during those years. So still not quite at the all-time low that was happening, between 2010 2014, but they are moving there extremely quickly. In fact, I'm not even sure how they are moving this quickly. It's a bit of a contentious issue in Brazil because, of course, a lot of people rely on the Amazon, and particularly clearing the Amazon, to do various different economic activities. Hopefully, Lula is also doing a good job making sure that those people are being taken care of. There's space for them in the economy that doesn't involve clearing and logging the Amazon. But overall, for the world, the Amazon used to be the largest carbon sink in the world. It is no longer because of all the deforestation that has taken place. Would love to see it become the world's largest carbon sink again. This is just one piece in the very, very big puzzle of climate change. So good to see it moving in the right direction.